But I must begin on the bill by thanking the Macmillan Cancer Research for their extremely useful briefing. I take their conclusions and extend them far more broadly than they ventured to do. Macmillan calls for an amendment to the bill requiring organisations have a statutory duty of care for customers. The charity suggests this is the best way to ensure that financial services providers take a preemptive approach to ensure they act in the best interests of their customers. Now, as you might expect, Macmillan focuses on the financial difficulties of people with cancer, but also notes that the Financial Conduct Authority concludes that 1 in 2 people will become financially vulnerable at some point in their lives. And I would suggest, in a complex, fast-changing world, overloaded with pressures on time and attention, with so many stressed by the struggle for mere survival and the fear of rampant insecurity, the sensible approach is for everyone to be treated as vulnerable, to acknowledge that our whole society is acutely vulnerable. If we create a system that works for the most vulnerable, that will be one that will work most securely, resiliently, and safely for everyone. And we know that our current system is not working for many at the individual level. Just look at the practical topical example of the disastrous performance of the insurance sector when it came to business interruption insurance for small businesses under COVID-19. And the financial sector is utterly failing at a structural level to meet the collective needs of our whole society, acutely vulnerable as the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us to be. A system that works best for everyone would be a financial sector that is a utility, a provision of essential services for the real economy, the economy that feeds us, builds our shelter, that clothes us, and provides the other essentials of life. Instead, what we have, following decades of financialisation of everything, from the care sector to the so-called water industry, is a financial sector as parasite, sucking funds out of the real economy and all too often off to tax havens, loading essential provisions and services with unsustainable debt. And if you think I'm being radical here, I'd invite you to read the Financial Times' extensive coverage of the impact of financial engineering on the water companies. We're more than a dozen years on from the 2008 financial crash, when the cash machines very nearly stopped working. And in the age of COVID-19, we're surely more aware now of the need for resilience and stability in this age of shocks. Yet I note that an Oxford University Faculty of Law conference held in 2018 on financial regulation concluded, "We're safer, but not as safe as we could and should be." And that was just thinking in the financial sector's own terms. I listened carefully to the minister's typically detailed and careful introduction, and I heard quite a bit about limiting risk, yet I did not hear the words climate or nature once. Yet we know that we need a financial sector that does not continue to fund the trashing of the planet and societies, to supply funds to fossil fuel operations destroying the planet, doesn't pour money into the destruction of the rainforest and the stuffing of the oceans with plastic, or spread poverty and inequality through funding sweatshops and outright slave labour. On the 25th of January, the US Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank simultaneously said that they would be making climate considerations a central part of finance, the importance of which the Nobel Lady Baroness Hayman highlighted. It appears we're not world leading, but world trailing yet again. Although we are, of course, world leading in dirty money, as detailed earlier in considerable forensic detail by the Nobel Lord Seeker. The issue was also mentioned by a number of members of the House in an earlier question session today on our relationship with Russia. We are a major global centre of corruption. The city is an orgy in stables, and this bill is clearly very sparing in its distribution of shovels. I give the House notice that I intend to support a proposed amendment to create a new corporate criminal offence for companies or bodies regulated by the FCA of failing to prevent economic crime. And I also look forward to working with the Nobel Lord Hendy on the issues of liability that he raised. In summary, we do obviously need a Financial Services Act, but this bill is nothing like what we need. We're seeing increasing numbers of communities around the world understand that the model of economy, society and finance that needed is one that allows us to live within, as the saying goes, within the donut, in the essential space that respects planetary limits while meeting human needs, ensuring everyone is treated with respect, given dignity, as defined by the economist Kate Raworth in her book, Doughnut Economics. We need a Financial Services Act that sets out how our financial sector can meet the need to do that, a very differently structured sector that takes care of all our needs instead of risking our security and our future. We are in an emergency state in 2021. Your Lordship's House has a responsibility to act to transform our planet-trashing, poverty-creating financial sector, as the other place has very clearly failed to do.